everyone. My name is Dillon. Today I'm going to be giving you my persuasive speech, and if I could just have everyone introduce themselves to the camera real quick, and then we can get started.
Matt.
Sandy.
Becky.
RL.
Brian.
Kimberly.
Anytime you turn on the TV or listen to the news, you hear about horrible acts and heinous crimes committed. For example, the shooting in Aurora, Colorado, or the Boston bombing. The question arises, what punishment, if any, is appropriate for criminals who commit such acts? Here's where the topic of the death penalty comes into play. There are those who believe that the death penalty is an outdated and barbaric practice, and one that is not an effective punishment for crime. On the other side of the fence are those that believe the death penalty is exactly what is needed for criminals such as those who commit acts I mentioned before. In light of the recent news and seemingly ever-present existence of monstrous criminal acts, the issue of the death penalty is as important today as it ever was. Today I will argue for the use of the death penalty within the justice system as a form of punishment for the most heinous criminal acts. One argument made against the death penalty is the fact that it cannot bring back the victims. However, one of the most important advantages of the death penalty is the closure it affords the victims' families. Loved ones of the victims can take decades to recover, if they ever do. But the death penalty can afford closure to the victims' families. Life in prison can prolong the victims' family's suffering, with the criminal still around looming over them. Additionally, the execution of a murderer sends a powerful message that in taking a precious life and committing a crime so horrid, the criminal forfeits their right to live. According to Kyle Gibson in his article, Death Penalty Repeal, capital punishment affords the only closure available to those left behind. It's important to remember that justice should be both penal in punishment and retributive for the victims. It should punish the perpetrator and offer some form of justice for the victim. Perhaps the most obvious argument for the death penalty is the deterrent effect it has on criminals. Individuals who protest the death penalty may say that the punishment is harsh. And in response to that, I say, yes, the death penalty is unquestionably harsh, as it should be. It is the fear of the harsh punishment that will make individuals think twice before committing such horrible acts. The most common and base fear is the fear of death, so it stands to reason that the death penalty would be an effective deterrent. Jeff Jacoby drives home his point in his article, Execution Saves Lives, when he calls to attention the fact that in general, whenever murder is punishable by death, murder rates drop. In fact, a study conducted by the University of Colorado shows that executions reduce the number of future crimes by 5 to 6. Looking at that purely from a numbers perspective, execute 1, save 5 to 6. It makes sense. Looking at it morally, you're executing 1 monstrous criminal in order to save 5 to 6 innocents. Another argument made against the death penalty is that life in prison is in fact a worse sentence than the death penalty. And if that were true, if life in prison actually were worse than the death penalty, then why would those on death row fight tooth and nail, search every loophole, and take every appeal in order to get their sentence reduced to life in prison? It doesn't make sense that someone would try to get a punishment if in fact that punishment was worse. Then let's think about the fiscal impact. Nora Kaplan-Brooker mentions in the article, Mr. Death Penalty, that the death penalty in the death row in California alone costs $180 million a year. And there's currently a problem with overcrowding in the prison system. It seems misguided to think that keeping more prisoners in prison for longer amounts of time is a wise choice. And as far as life in prison being a better deterrent, without capital punishment, criminals already incarcerated are given virtually a free pass in order to commit further murders within the prison system, either other prisoners or the guards who are put there to protect us. Now, even though 61% of Americans, according to a Gallup poll mentioned in How the Death Penalty Saves Lives by David Mulhausen, 61% of Americans view the death penalty as morally acceptable. That's not to say the current death penalty isn't without error. According to Andrew Cohen, you stand a far higher chance of getting the death penalty if you are black, especially if your victim is white. In order for capital punishment to be effective, it needs to be uniformly administered, regardless of race, gender, or social status. But the fact remains that capital punishment is just, it is appropriate, and it is effective. It is the job of the criminal justice system to protect the people from enemies of society, and if that means administering the harshest of punishments, then so be it. Thank you.